People of Reddit, when is one time you have felt genuine, 100% fear? Story 1. It was almost 5 years ago. I was home with my 2 daughters, who at the time were 3 and just over 1. I was giving them a bath, kneeling on the ground, and all of a sudden it felt like something exploded in my heart. I remember thinking, just get the kids out of the water, nothing else matters. I got them out of the water and was able to call an ambulance. I was taken to the hospital, and long story short, I had blood clots in both lungs and my right knee. They think a piece of the knee blood clot broke free and passed through my heart. I am very lucky to be alive, and so grateful I was able to get my daughters out of the tub. I found out I have multiple blood clotting disorders and am on blood thinners for life, but I am alive. Story 2. My wife and son were out of town, so I had the house to myself. I used that opportunity to do something I never get to do. Have a shower with the washroom door open. Small things like that make me happy. Anyway, I was just getting out of the shower when, without a sound, I see someone's head slowly go by in the dark corridor outside the washroom door. I nearly hurt myself in terror. The doors were all locked. How did anyone get in? And there was something unnatural and menacing about that slow, silent glide by the door. Like they must have known I was there, but they just didn't care. Plus, whoever it was really tall. The head was 7 feet off the ground. My heart raced so fast I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Wet and terrified, I peered out of the door to find the mystery solved. The head was my son's helium balloon toy, partly deflated over time, floating by on the slight air current. In short, I had nearly been frightened to death by my kid's toy. Not my proudest moment. Story 3. When I was still a beginning driver, I basically misjudged a turn at a highway exit when it was raining. My car swiveled and turned around. Somehow I managed to get it to stop, but I ended up bumping the side railing with the back of my car, and the car turned more than 180 degrees on the road before coming to a halt. This is a very busy exit, and if someone had been right behind me, I'd have been dead. Somehow I managed to gather my wits, restart the car, turn it around, and drive off before another car hit me. I stopped at the earliest possible parking opportunity, and that was when I felt it. The fear. I just started shaking uncontrollably. Story 4. I hate when something goes wrong with a boat. It's the worst feeling. You feel so alone, like no help is going to come to you. Like my dad, who thought it was a great idea to buy a new boat, then sail it all the way through the Chesapeake to his dock. He didn't know what buttons did what. His engine died midway through the bay, so he was stuck drifting for a while till it magically turned on. He also had no direction, as the GPS that was on the boat didn't have the location far from shore, so he was stuck using a paper map to check on the buoys to make sure he was on the right track. He also almost ran out of fuel just before he got back. Needless to say, he didn't sail far from his dock for the next few years. Story 5. Driving to Alaska on the Alcan came around a turn, and standing in the road was a mother brown bear and 2 cubs. I was in a 1980 Ford Courier pickup with the exterior body thickness of an aluminum can. I came to a quick halt as she faced the vehicle in a clearly protective stance. Unsure if backing up would set her off, I put it in R and sat unmoving for what felt like an eternity until the cubs ambled into the woods and she followed. Story 6. I got dengue twice, which is a painful virus in Southeast Asia. There are only 4 strands of dengue, and if you survive one, you are immune to that one for life. I survived the first one and was in my bed for 2 weeks. I felt paralyzed. I couldn't do anything. Using any technology gave me a headache. I recovered completely fine, and then a few months went by and I caught dengue twice. If you don't know, catching it multiple times is a lot more dangerous. I had internal bleeding and my life was a misery. I was genuinely fearing. I obviously recovered. Really well, actually. Better than most people. This time it took a month to recover. I ended up having vein issues in my left kidney and testicle, but I had to get surgery to cut those veins and basically force my body to use other passages. If you catch it, get medical help and you will have a pretty good chance at recovery. However, the fever spikes you get from it are something different. If you are an active person, it will take ages to get back into sports. Story 7. A few years back, I was in a toxic relationship with an individual suffering from several mental illnesses. He refused to take medications. I had not a clue how bad it had gotten until he was driving us back to our apartment. He started rambling about how God chose him to save my soul, and I was a fallen angel. He would send me back to heaven. He floored the gas on a short dead-end road and almost drove into a cement wall. I remember briefly wondering if I should put the car at 50 miles per hour or stay in and pray the airbag saved me. He slammed the brake last minute as I was about to open the door and jump. Absolute fear. I ended up hospitalized a few days later due to other shitty relationship-related events and never saw him again. Hands down, one of the more terrifying moments of my life, but not the only one I experienced by being with him. Story 8. The morning of my mom's wedding. Everyone relaxing, eating breakfast, clothes everywhere, cousins running around. All of the adults are on their porch chilling. I hear my daughter screaming. I run in the dining room. There were clothes draped over the back of a dining room chair. The clothes had a metal coat hanger on them. She had gotten the hook of the metal hanger under her eyelid. I grabbed the back of her head and slowly pulled the hook out. Put a little ice on her eye for a bit. Luckily, it hadn't hit her eyeball at all. Story 9. I was flying an airliner. We were maybe 1,000 above the ground while on approach to land at a smaller airport. There were thunderstorms in the area and we ended up in a microburst with zero visibility. We got a wind shear warning in the cockpit and started to go around. At full throttle and the nose up, we were still sinking at around 400 ft/min. Everything seemed to be running in slow motion. Both me and the other pilot were running through our required actions and callouts due to the training. In the back of my mind, all I could think about was, I can't see the ground and we are falling. I know there is a hill out here somewhere. This is where I am going to die. The plane got down to around 400 feet off the ground before it finally started to climb. This was the most fear I had ever felt in my life. Story 10. A few years ago, I was trying to find gas in the middle of nowhere. I found a gas station but couldn't get the pump to work. A guy pulled up and told me that they wouldn't work because it was after 8 p.m. He said he had a few gallons in his truck and offered. I offered him cash and he declined. He was nice and respectful until he began slowly pumping the slowest 2 gallons of my life. Then he started saying in a creepy, through an almost angry, clenched teeth voice, "You look really good, you married?" The complete change in demeanor and tone of voice scared the absolute shit out of me. It sent a chill through my body. I was absolutely terrified. Even if I'd had a weapon, he could have overtaken me. There was not a soul around, and the pasture around us was at least 2-3 feet of grass. I knew I as a goner. He kept saying lewd things, then asking where I worked and lived until I took off. Story 11. I was riding my bike home from work along a pretty busy main road. I live in the city. I got to a downhill and started to pick up pace when I noticed a brown snake, which are very deadly, lying across the bike just lane ahead of me. There was a car in the lane next to me, and it was too late to stop, but I somehow managed to dodge the snake and kept riding. About 50 meters later, just as I thought I was safe, I heard a very loud hissing and felt something rush past my leg and thought the snake had somehow caught up and bitten me. It turns out my back tire burst, but in the moment, I was absolutely terrified. Story 12. I'm from the Dominican Republic. There are a lot of dogs in the streets, and they usually hang in these colmados, mini market, that are in pretty much every neighborhood. My parents would send me to buy stuff almost every weekend, and the dogs would chase me a lot of the time since the colmados sell over the counter. I would have to buy whatever it was and try to not let the dogs see me, and if they saw me, I had to run uphill while being chased by 5 dogs. That was not fun. Edit. I lived in that neighborhood for 6 years, and for 5 of them, it was the same dog gang every time. They got old and died. Story 13. I used to measure roofs for a solar company. One time I went up on a very steep roof of a 2-story house alone and without a harness. This roof plane was too steep to walk, and the shingles were old and crumbling, so I had to crawl so I didn't slide down towards the edge. After about an hour of crawling around, the sun began to bake the shingles so they were too hot to touch, so I decided to bug out. As the roof was too steep to walk, the only way to the ladder was by scooting on my butt with my feet pointed towards the edge. Every time I skid toward the edge, my heart exploded in fear because it was hard to stop moving. I had to use my hands to slow myself down, and they were getting burned. All I could do was to rub my palms on my legs to transfer some of the heat, but they were being scorched. Imagine putting your hand on a hot frying pan full of grit. I was completely alone in a faraway town with no one to call. It took forever to get to the ladder, and by the time I did, I was shaking and drenched in sweat. When I finally got back to the ground, some people came out from a nearby house and said they saw me and were ready to call 911. I had burn blisters on both palms, and I never went on a roof like that again without a helper or PPE. Story 14. My SO was in kind of a slump emotionally for a bit, and while I was at work, he texted me and seemed pretty down. I asked him what was up. He didn't respond. I tried calling, but he denied my calls. Then suddenly he just wrote, "I don't feel too good mentally," and just went offline on all platforms at once and shut off his phone. I just slammed my work laptop shut and ran as fast as I could to the subway to get home. When I finally reached the apartment, he wasn't even there. I was so freaked out, I was just screaming his name like madwoman, somehow hoping he'd respond. Everything turned out just fine in the end, and he apologized for scaring me. But oh man, I was so sure I was going to be the one to find his body that day. Story 15. The time I got into bed with my girlfriend and immediately started coughing up blood. Ran into the bathroom and held onto the sink for dear life. Every breath I tried to take, I just ended up wheezing more blood out of my lungs. By the time the ambulance got there, I had pretty much come to terms that this was how I died. Then it slowed down and finally stopped by the time I got to the ER. Long story short, it turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. Had chemo for 6 months and am cured now with minimal repercussions. Scariest time of my life. Story 16. When my mom and then 5-year-old brother got in an ATV accident, they were driving slowly through the woods and a large dead tree fell alongside the trail, knocking down a smaller tree, which hit them both in the head. Freak accident. My other brother and I were outside filling the pool, and we heard my mom yelling something. I didn't know what it was, but my stomach dropped. We both ran to the head of the trail across the yard, and she was carrying my little brother, both covered in blood. She ran half of that mile-long trail carrying him. They were both in the hospital for a week. Mom got some stitches in her face, and my brother's skull was shattered, requiring surgery and a metal plate put in. He's graduating high school next year and doing well. Story 17. I got alcohol poisoning, and it didn't hit till I was on a train. I had gone to the train bathroom to throw up, but I was dry heaving and I didn't have water, and I could feel myself starting to black out. I couldn't even see straight enough to figure out how to open the door. And I started to think, oh my God, I'm going to die in a train bathroom with my skirt hiked up. They're going to take pictures of this. Oh my God, people are going to see me like this. It was the most afraid of my life I've ever been. Not because I was going to die, but because I was going to die alone, in a train bathroom, because I was too stupid to stop doing shots. As I started to see spots, someone grabbed me by the hair, forced a water bottle between my lips and was like, "Swallow." And I did, and I puked. And I did again, and I puked. And he got another bottle and did the same. And we went like that until I held down a few sips, and blood started flowing to my head again. He got off at my stop and walked me home, waited while I threw up a couple times, and made sure my boyfriend was there to take care of me when I got home. The whole time, he was just bitching at me. Just a non-stop flow of, "Do you understand how much of a burden you've put on other people? I'm going to be 3 hours late getting home because I missed my stop making sure you were all right. This is irresponsible. You need to take better care of yourself, learn your limits, and for fuck's sake, if you're not going to do that, at least wear pants." Just non-stop. He was right on all counts, of course. That's what I love about Boston. People are assholes, all of them, but they're assholes that look out for one another. Story 18. And I did feel off for a while, yes. I remember waking up one morning in August with a slight pain in my chest. Thought I hurt myself moving stuff the day before, so I didn't think of it much, but it stuck around. Eventually my body started to get really itchy too. Later found out that was a symptom, never would have guessed. But other than being skinny, itchy, and the pain in my chest, I felt okay. It definitely caught me by surprise when it happened, but after I was diagnosed, it started to make sense. I thought everyone just felt that shitty. Story 19. When I was trying to sleep at around 3 and felt someone press on my bed. Then the bag on the chair started shaking. Then again, I felt something on my bed. Finally, I had the courage to switch on the light and found a giant rat on my bed. Story 20. The morning of my mom's wedding. Everyone relaxing, eating breakfast, clothes everywhere, cousins running around. All of the adults are on their porch, chilling. I hear my daughter screaming. I run in the dining room. There were clothes draped over the back of a dining room chair. The clothes had a metal coat hanger on them. She had gotten the hook of the metal hanger under her eyelid. I grabbed the back of her head and slowly pulled the hook out. put a little ice on her eye for a bit. Luckily, it hadn't hit her eyeball at all.